Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast from a couple of geeks of a certain age. From our youth to present day, we look at the development of fantasy and science fiction culture and all its manifestations. We were a geek before it was chic. I am your co-host, Steven. Just call him Taylor, and that's not a pronoun joke.
No, it's not. And I'm your co-host, Tom the Troll Grant.
With all the debauchery that goes along with it,
Right.
no doubt.
Not an internet troll.
No, different kind of troll.
Yeah.
See? Today on Ancient Geeks, we're looking at Jim Starlin's run on the Marvel Comics character Adam Warlock, and maybe a few other folks as well. So, Tom, before we get into Warlock, what have you been doing geek-wise these days?
Well, as I'm sure you did too, probably, I finished Strange New Worlds Season 3. And
I did?
Yeah, and then we should talk about it sometime. Just for today, I'll give my one-word review, which was ahem.
Yeah. I think I liked it more than you did, but I figured that would be the case.
Okay,
although I have thoughts. You are Mr. Negative, and I am Dr. Difficult. And
I have to preserve my branding as Mr. Negative.
It only seems fair.
Yeah. So also, I tried to start Star Trek Prodigy, and I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
It comes out of the gate with just a slew of spunky youngsters. Is that what the show is? Spunky youngsters.
I would say that there's probably more spunky youngsters than one might prefer. I think that it starts off with a particular vibe that develops into a more Star Trek feel as time goes on. And I found the entire journey worth it.
Okay.
Although I can think of some things that may annoy you later, but I won't tell you what they are.
Okay. Oh boy.
Things that I might have liked, but that might annoy you, if that gives you any kind of clue.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the last half of season 1, as I recall, and these are actually 20-something episode seasons, as I recall, and really all of season 2 is much more Star Trek-y than the beginning.
Okay.
But I thought it was worth it. Anyway, that's all I can say about it.
Yeah, the other thing I'll mention is this is a little bit of an embarrassing admission, but I started to get spotty watching Voyager back in the day, and I never actually saw the Tuvix episode.
Oh, you should watch that.
I did watch it.
Okay.
I did watch it. So I thought it was again, very short review. Great idea. The resolution left something to be desired.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
We could almost do an entire episode on Tuvix, I think.
I know.
It
would have been nice, maybe one or two more scenes of them struggling with the decision. That would have been nice. But anyway, I got that out of the way. So that's my what have I been doing lately book report. How about you?
So I did finish Strange New Worlds, and I may have quibbles, but I probably liked it more than you did, but that's fine. Really, I think everything I've been doing really geek-wise since the last time we recorded has all been pod related. It's Substack stuff and reading these comics, and maybe reading even more comics than I was supposed to, and then some movies and stuff for upcoming episodes. So, that's keeping me occupied and enjoying it all the way. So, and this was, I think, a tough one this week. What theme music did you come up with for the show?
It was a tough one. It might have been the hardest one for me.
I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah. So I first thought Shock the Monkey by Peter Gabriel, because it's about revelation, and Peter Gabriel has a vibe I think would be very resonant with Jim Starlin. But so I discarded that one, and then I tried a psychedelic band from the 60s, Vanilla Fudge, who did a version of Season of the Witch, which is pretty nuts. As much as I like that version of it, of the original Donovan song, it still didn't sit quite right. So I went completely in a different direction. And so my choice would be, there is a Saturday Night Live bit about Space Pants with Peter Dinklage. I would pick Space Pants.
Sure. Why not? I went I bopped around trying to find a couple different options. I won't go down my journey. I ended up with Soul Sacrifice by Santana.
That's a great one.
So there we go. But still, this was not only was the music the hardest one for this week, but trying to come up with a joke up top was kind of hard. He has no catchphrases. There's no like notable quotes that I could come up with.
No.
He's just Warlock, man. All right,
Right.
so let's do this. Let me give a little background on the character Adam Warlock before we dive into the specific
Hmm.
conversation. The character is created actually by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in Fantastic Four 66 and 67. He's an artificial being created by this thing called the Enclave, and he's simply called him. That was my joke at the top there.
Hmm.
He doesn't do a whole lot in those comics. He just is sort of there. This whole thing does raise a long-term question as a nerd and a pedant that if this group could create something this powerful, why don't they just create some more and like take over the world? Because he's pretty powerful
Yeah.
ultimately. But anyway,
Or give him a better pronoun than him,
well,
right?
yeah,
Because
him
it's uncomfortable. It's the subject of the sentence. You say,
exactly.
him was just here, right? You just sound like a moron.
You sound like Bizarro.
Exactly.
Maybe that's what he was talking about. So him goes on to fight Thor in issues 165 and 166. With there's pretty good art in that episode, those two issues, but it's kind of a dull story in which
Mm,
him wants, is looking for a mate as him do.
right. Her.
Well, hers later actually.
Yeah.
There is a her created at
Yeah.
some point. So anyway, then he drifts in space. This is an ongoing theme where he ends up drifting in
Mhm.
space. So then he comes back in Marvel
Wait,
Premiere
wait,
number.
wait. So
Go
he
ahead.
so he also had an aunt.
Okay.
He had a couple of aunts. They were them.
Okay. Took me a second. That's a deep cut for the pod. So there you
And
go.
it's a deep cut. I'm sure somebody's going to get it.
I hope so. If
Yeah.
not, oh well.
Yeah. I'm sure
As
Blake from Monster Talk would get that.
hopefully so. I mean, speaking as someone who used to tell my classes, I tell these jokes to entertain me, not necessarily you.
Right.
I'll continue to say that in this context.
Yeah.
So anyway, so in Marvel Premiere number one in 1972, I believe, we have him floating in space, and his cocoon, which is a funky looking cocoon, is found by the High Evolutionary. Nothing grandiose about that title.
Hmm.
Who rescues him. Basically, I'm not going to go through all the details, and he gets during this period of time he gets the Soul Gem, which will become relevant later. He eventually is named Adam Warlock, and he gets sent to a planet called Counter Earth, which is this duplicate Earth on the other side of the sun from the Earth that the High Evolutionary creates.
Hmm.
And the first 8 issues of the comic book Warlock is about Adam Warlock on Counter Earth, which I know
Yeah.
you read, and that I also skimmed. It was kind of painful to read every single word, but I got
Hmm.
the gist. And then eventually, he ends up at the end of 2 episodes of the Incredible Hulk floating in space.
Right. So
So
when he
yeah,
greets the High Evolutionary, he did
yes,
not say hi, hi.
I'm afraid I don't think you did. I'm not sure
Are
he
you
said.
hi, hi?
Are you high, high? Well, I think that maybe Roy Thomas and Gil Kane were a little high when they wrote some of
They
those
were
episodes,
definitely
those
those were such
comics.
60s comics.
Yeah, so let's talk just for a minute about this before we go into the Jim Starlin of it all. Super 60s. This is sort of like what if a bunch of hippie types, or at least what stereotypical hippies were like, would find a superhero to hang out with on a planet
Hmm.
that didn't really have any other superheroes, but a bunch of
Hmm.
animals who are bad guys, super intelligent animals. It's a strange
Yeah,
comic.
who say they're evil.
Yes,
Like
right.
they greet each
That's right.
other, just like saying things like "Yay, evil!" Off to do some evil now.
Well, this is an era in which um, comic villains would do things like call themselves the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Just
Right.
terrible branding, to be totally honest.
Right. This is never going to have the Mitchell and Webb, are we the bad guys sort of
That's right.
moment.
That's
They
right.
already
Exactly.
know.
They already know. That's right. So there is, I mean, I don't know. It's often said that Warlock is playing an almost Christ-like character in this comic. Did
Oh,
you get that?
definitely.
How would you describe that
Oh,
vibe?
very much so.
Okay,
Very
go
much
ahead.
so. Very Jesus Christ superstar.
That's a good way of putting it. That's a
Yeah.
great way of putting it. Yeah. And he is actually kind of crucified at the end of that episode. I keep saying episode again. That issue of the Hulk on one,
Yeah.
and then again floats in space. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, and I don't think you'll disagree with me, that in some ways the him incarnation is almost a different character than this initial Adam Warlock incarnation, and really
Right.
what Starlin does with the character, and after that, is almost a different character.
Oh, quite
Um,
true. Like the original him was almost like the Frankenstein monster.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
And then so I would say this about it, I never really clicked with the pre Jim Starlin character
No,
in
no.
any of the manifestations. It was really boring, and so like for people who don't know Adam Warlock or why we're talking about him, you would not have guessed that this character would become fundamental to the Marvel universe
Yeah, and I
and
think
fundamental to the Marvel movies, even though they kind of botched his appearance.
right, or ignored a lot of what he did and gave his role to other characters, and then did
Right,
include him late in the game, but not in a way that was commensurate
right,
with what he was.
yeah.
So, I mean, but all this happens. There's a brief hiatus, and then enter Jim Starlin. Jim Starlin, who is we've talked about Starlin before. We talked about him specifically in the Batman episode. He wrote a very
Mhm.
important run of Batman in the '80s. But Starlin is really known for his sort of quote unquote cosmic characters, right?
Mhm.
He comes over
Space
this
traveling.
space, yeah, big
Yeah,
ideas,
lots of
powerful aliens.
lots of wacky powers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, the main area people probably encountered was when he took over the Captain Marvel comic, which also was a kind of boring comic that he made into
Hmm.
a whole different level of significance and importance. He also is, of course, the creator of Thanos. To speak of his general import to the Marvel universe, he creates
Hmm.
Thanos. He creates Drax the Destroyer. He creates the Infinity Stones. All the stuff that really was central to the Phase One and Phase Two. Maybe I always forget what phase is which. Certainly, Phase One of the Marvel MCU, right? The
Hmm.
all the stuff with Thanos, all the stuff with the Infinity Gems, the Stones, and everything that led up to Avengers Endgame was really from the mind of Jim Starlin in some ways, right? At least the broad outline of the plots. And of course, the story, as you point out, did include Adam Warlock in the comics, but doesn't in the movies. So he also was the creator of an independent comic called Dreadstar that he owned that also came out in the early 80s. And apparently he's trying to crowdsource a graphic novel of right now still, which is sort of interesting. But anyway,
Yeah.
in fact, this side note, I looked, there was a Dreadstar revival graphic novel a few years ago.
Hmm.
And I went to look to see what it would cost to buy, and it's $200. So I guess I'm not going to be reading that thing. But
No.
that's sort of interesting. Anyway, side note. So, what are we actually talking about here today? We're talking about three issues of a comic called Strange Tales, 178 through 179, where Starlin took control of this character, and then issues 9 through 15 of the revived Warlock title itself, and then two annuals, Avengers Annual number 7 and Marvel 201 Annual number 2, excuse me, in 1977. And this is sort of the first saga of Warlock as written by Jim Starlin, which includes again the Infinity. Well, at that point they're called Gemstone, the Soul Gems, and Thanos, amongst other things. So, what did you think of this character when you? How did you encounter this, Tom? And what did you think about it at the time?
Well, I had read spottily the earlier Warlocks, and uh, they didn't click with me, as I said. But this was also a time when Marvel was experimenting a lot. It was an interesting period, and they were already revitalizing characters, including I'm sure we'll mention it later, but like Starlin, before revitalizing Warlock as a character, had revitalized Captain Marvel.
Hmm.
Not the Captain Marvel from the DC universe, but this was a member of the Kree race and just another kind of B or C list superhero.
Right.
But anyway, Starlin had made him really interesting. So you had at this time there were all the monster books, like
Hmm.
Tomb of Dracula and Man Thing and so forth. There was the Conan books, which were insanely popular. There were the black and white magazines.
Hmm.
There were like like there was Don McGregor's Black Panther, which was a very almost kind of literary take on the character after him appearing in the Fantastic Four in the Lee Kirby years. Howard the Duck. So there are all these weird things out there, and it kind of whetted my appetite for more weird things like that. Or I wouldn't say weird in the sense of just like off, sort of off, but weird in the sense of offbeat. And so when I first read the strange tales that started
Hmm.
Starlin with the Warlock character, I was hooked immediately. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I read it when it came out, and it was like, this is great.
No, I was struck. I was struck on the reread
Yeah,
that when you read Strange Tales, whatever I said the number, 178, it's just the contrast with the previous stuff is so stark.
right.
Starlin, one, he's just there's so much more richness and depth to the story already, just in the first page.
Hmm.
Um, and it does a good job of recapping Warlock's history without you really. If anybody's looking at this for the first time and like doesn't know where to start, if you start with 178, you can start there. It tells you everything you need to know about all the other comics
Right.
very quickly in a way that's totally comprehensive, which in some ways speaks to the shallowness in my mind of the previous stories.
Hmm.
And then really launches into a whole different tale and really redefines his character almost from the very beginning. I had not read this stuff when it first came out. I realized that I may have I don't know when I first encountered the character. It's kind of hard to know. I may have seen some of
Hmm.
one or two issues because again, I'm old, just I'm younger enough that I would not have been buying comics when this first came out, or barely would have been probably, and had not really gotten fully into Marvel at this point. But there was a Warlock special edition that was printed in 1982,
Hmm.
on back when comics would be reprinted on that nicer paper, and so they could charge more, of course. But that's where I first encountered this. In fact, everything we're talking about, all of this Starlin stuff from Strange Tales, Warlock, and then those two annuals are all reprinted, as well as another story or two reprinted in those special edition comics, and that's how I encountered it. And then
Yeah.
I remember seeing, and I thought I had. I went and looked, and I culled the stuff when I moved because I culled a bunch of comics, or I just my comic collection is a little disorganized right now. I had some of the other ones, like the Gil Kane Counter Earth things, and
Hmm.
I'm like, I remember reading it, like I bought it because it was Warlock, and I was interested in it, but like this just isn't the same.
Yeah.
So I also know that I had encountered some of Sterling's Captain Marvel, so that probably was part of what whet my appetite. And
Yeah.
Dreadstar came out in '82 as well,
Yeah.
so all this sort of convergence for me. Um, but man, I think that Starlin illustrates how a particular writer slash artist in this case can really transform a property and really revitalize it. We talked about this some with
Yeah.
Perez and Wolfman in the Teen Titans, or Claremont and Cockrum with the X-Men. But this is
Hmm.
really a true reimagining of this character.
Oh yeah, as Captain Marvel was. And so
Yes,
I think it's worth rewinding for a
sure.
moment on that because I certainly picked up on Starlin from Captain Marvel, and he made a space-based character even more cosmic.
Yes,
Like kind of like reinvented the character. He had new superpowers. He was linked to a human being, and they would swap places from the negative zone universe into this
yes.
one at
It's my least
times.
favorite part, quite frankly. But
Yeah. Yeah, it was annoying. It was annoying. I kept trying to shoehorn Rick Jones in everywhere.
actually,
It,
not to interrupt your flow of thought, but that reminds me. That's what the Counter Earth stuff reminded me of. A planet of Rick Joneses
oh yeah.
hanging around with with Warlock.
Groovy, man.
That's right. That version of Rick
Do
Jones.
you dig?
That's right. I reach. Don't be a Herbert. Anyway,
Yeah.
anyway,
So
go
anyway,
ahead.
and the main villain for Captain Marvel in the new incarnation was Thanos.
Yes.
And Thanos was trying to kill everything in the universe, and he had the soul gems that become important later on,
Hmm.
in the Infinity Gauntlet. And actually, like he doesn't have all of them. He doesn't have the soul gem out of the five
Right.
or 6 gems. And so like he has
As
to come
every
up with,
collector knows, you need a complete set.
you do the extra rares, you know, soul gems, the labubus of
Oh, dude.
70s comics. But anyway, it just, like he said, okay, man, if I had the soul gem, I would, this would be this whole, universal annihilation hobby of mine would be so much easier. Anyway, it set up Warlock in a lot of ways, which we'll
Yes.
talk about. But anyway, go ahead.
No, no, I think that's absolutely
Yeah.
accurate. So before we talk about some specifics, um, what about Sterling's, what about Sterling's approach, well, to comics in general, but or to Warlock specifically, really appealed to you?
I think to my teenage self, he was first of all writing kind of a little bit more of a grown-up sort of story.
Yes.
And certainly, not the typical superhero fights villain, and it takes him off to the pokey at the end of the story. For example, there's the fight between him and the one of the Black Knights. Part of we'll get into the whole lore
Right.
of
Right.
what happens in these comics. But anyway, he fights this guy who's a bad guy, and then absorbs his soul, and then like realizes to his horror that this villain was actually imagining himself as the good guy.
Right.
And he feels immense remorse. I mean, I think when did Spider-Man ever do that? Or Ghost Rider. It was a very different sort of stories, that you got out of it. Plus, just like the interesting twists, which we'll get into this in this series, were just, I think so imaginative that I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, not only were sort of the overall villains and conflicts more sophisticated than many comics of the time, and maybe some of the comics even now, the character himself is he has angst.
Yeah.
He is dealing with sort of self-doubt and self-discovery.
Hmm.
Um, there are also themes like his fate that come into play that I know you'll probably want to talk about later for various reasons.
Oh yeah.
So he's just really compelling in a way that just made him a different kind of superhero. I agree, we got to keep throwing this word cosmic around, and partially it's because that's how it
Hmm.
was self-described at the time. But I mean, these stories are set like much of the Marvel stories, although he was a little more earthbound than Warlock was at the time, or maybe ever was really. Um, it clearly takes place in a wider universe with wholly different realities or planets and organizations that are well outside of Earth. Earth is often not even really mentioned. It's not even in relation to
No.
Earth. It's all out there. And there is again these huge big themes in order and chaos and fate and vast empires and their implications for millions and billions of people, and also includes entities that are linked to these more sort of
Hmm.
what I'm even trying to say, but about reality itself, right? And somehow the sort of a manifestation of reality in an individual creature or power. And
Right.
so this is just far more compelling on a grand scale than, will Daredevil be able to stop the Kingpin from, slinging drugs in Hell's Kitchen or whatever?
Right. Yeah. So the magnitude of the decisions that he has to make
Yes.
are enormous. And
Yes.
and Spider-Man's famously angsty, and there are other angsty
Sure.
superhero characters, but this is at a huge scale, particularly given who the villain is in this
Yes.
run of comics.
Yes.
And you often get, of course, in all kinds of genre fiction, the moment when the villain says, "Ah, and I are not so different."
That's right.
Here
Yeah. It's
that
pretty,
takes it up quite a big notch.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I'll
So shall we
say,
get into the
well, let me
specifics,
ask
or
about the
yeah,
art.
yeah.
Let's talk about the art for a second, and then we can talk about
Hmm.
spoiler related stuff. And if for some reason anybody wants to bail for now and go read these things, then
Hmm.
we'll at least give that warning. But I think Starlin's art is also quite compelling. He is
Very.
uh, like other artists that I've described that I like Byrne and Perez. He uses the page differently than standard artists. There,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
you
The
know,
breakdown of the panels, if there were
yeah,
even panels,
yeah. If there are
yeah,
even panels, and he also
yeah,
has this thing that he does, and it shows up in Captain Marvel. It definitely shows up in Dreadstar, and it's in Warlock. Well, he will use little tiny panels with like the heads of characters who are talking, describing things, while there's also
right.
visuals that back up the words. He actually also uses a lot of words sometimes. I mean, a lot of words.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think in a way that's problematic. It's just an idea. He's just using all this very effectively, the words, the pictures, the framing, the layouts, and his art is kind of unique, right? I mean, I don't know that I would compare him to anybody else exactly.
Well, I
There-
would.
Go ahead.
So I would say he is definitely inspired by Steve Ditko.
Yes, I can see that.
For those who don't know, was the kind of the originator of Doctor Strange, and Ditko would do these really bizarre landscapes, otherworldly or other dimensional
Right.
places, like where there are there's not ground, but there are like little rocks kind of floating around that people can step on and jump to
Hmm.
one from another and so forth, and weird, diagonal paths that swooped around and so forth. Anyway, he was really good at kind of creating this dreamlike landscape. But I was never a huge fan of Ditko. And
No, nor
in
was
this
I.
run, I noticed on the reread that I did that Starlin kind of tips his hat to Ditko,
Hmm.
but Starlin is
Well,
way better than Ditko.
yeah, I mean, they're influences. That much
Yeah,
is clear. I mean, he also says he was influenced by Kirby, and I can see that as well.
definitely. Yeah,
I, but I mean, in terms of the actual way in which he draws, the way in which he draws characters.
yeah.
I mean, maybe there's some Bernie Wrightson-esque stuff in some of his monsters,
Hmm.
or occasionally his faces, especially of Warlock, reminded me a little bit of John Byrne. But really, overall, the way he draws human beings, the way he draws monsters, the way he even poses his characters, the way he draws women, all of it, it's different and very distinct. And I
And he
can't
also
think
did
of,
interesting things with shadows often.
yes, yes.
You said kind of how the panels will tell the story
Hmm.
was very different. Also, like little details, like he would draw like the Death Ship uh, issue, like
Hmm.
very interesting details on the spaceship where like
Yes.
there's a background that's like a mosaic that he would draw. So all these neat little things he would throw in that he didn't have to, right? He could have blown through the assignment the way that Sal Buscema did, or
Hmm.
Don Heck did, but this artists I don't have a lot of love for, but from this time period. But he didn't, right? He really wanted to kind of put his all into what he did.
No, they're very impressive and visually
Yeah.
very appealing,
Hmm.
very appealing. Okay, so again, if for some reason no one wants to be spoiled, time to go. But um,
A
so there
50-year
is
old
this major.
comic, so I think
I
it's okay
know.
if we spoil it.
So I struggle with. I mean, I'll go ahead and say my own. I thought about this. I mean, on the one hand, by definition, everything we talk about here is old, usually, with
Right.
a few exceptions. Um, but I'm also hopeful in some cases that someone will listen to an episode that they don't know about and maybe would be turned on to some of these properties.
Hmm.
So it seems a little fair.
Well,
But
I
by
think
the
it's
same
safe
token,
because one of the things we'll talk about is revealed almost right away.
oh yeah, the first thing, the fact that here we go, the fact that the Magus, who is the main villain for the major storyline that goes
Yeah.
through issue 11, is uh, a future version of Warlock.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And who founded the Universal Church,
Church of Truth. The Church of Universal Truth.
Church of
I always,
Universal Truth. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And, so somehow his future self went back in time,
Yes.
established this totalitarian empire that was seeking to take over the entire galaxy. And so you say Magus, I say Magus.
Let's call the whole thing off.
because maybe for me, Magus sounds too close to Magoo. But anyway, there's no right answer. Of course, there's a right answer, but we're not going to
There
worry
probably is a
about it.
right answer.
There is a right
I
answer.
will blame, as I can blame many things. It probably is because I'm from Texas.
Right. So
I don't
so
know.
basically
I've always thought it was, yeah.
I'll say Magus. So the
No,
Magus,
Magus, you're right. I think either way works. Doesn't matter.
but anyway, he
That
says,
guy, the Afro guy.
I'm just a more evolved version of you. I just see
Yes,
the world better
that's right.
and more clearly than you do. And that was like like it was like the second issue or so that
Oh no, it's revealed very quickly. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not really even that much of a spoiler, to be honest.
and that was like a whoa moment.
It was. No,
Yeah.
it was. Oh, look, I will say two things. One, it seems worth pointing out that this is clearly a theme that Starlin likes because it really is reflected in the Dread Star stories. Because the main villain is a galaxy-spanning totalitarian empire
Right.
run by a church.
Mhm.
So this is clearly something he has a thing about, which is fine. A lot of his themes run through a lot of his
Right.
comics. But the whole Magus thing, I mean, this is the kind of thing that really just there's some deep part of my brain that this really appeals to, right? This whole
Right.
time paradoxy kind of deal. It's the stuff that I loved about Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who sometimes,
Hmm.
the whole complex interwoven nature of the story just really even now. And I have some critiques about some of how it was handled, but it was still really amazing. And I still found this a very compelling read, and I've read it multiple times over the years.
Right.
And so I just think it's an elevated it's an elevated plot, an elevated set of characters, an elevated setting with great art that just really shows what comic books can do,
Yeah.
and which is why it's so appealing to me. I think it's even better than I don't know. You may or may not agree. I think the Megas saga in particular, or maybe even just
Mhm.
this whole run of Warlock from that we're talking about here up and through those annuals is better than the Captain Marvel stuff.
Hmm.
And I think in some ways it's in some ways better than some of the Infinity War stuff, to be honest.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
so like the Captain Marvel run that Starlin did was closer to standard Marvel.
yes, I think that's fair.
So like the conclusion of it with Thanos involves the Avengers and the Thing and Spider-Man. It's more like a typical brawl with
Hmm.
the big bad and his henchmen.
That's right. That's right. Um, okay. So so what would you like to say, or is there anything else you want to say about the mega storyline, which again runs from uh, issue 9 through issue is that no, it's not right. It starts with the Strange Tale stuff and then goes into
Right.
the Starlin comic,
Well, there are
the
these other
Warlock comic.
interesting reveals. Since we're spoiling things,
Yeah, it's time
I'm
to
sure we could
spoil,
talk
spoil,
about it.
spoil.
Right. So like he gets a couple of interesting companions, Pip the Troll,
Yes,
hence
that's
my
right.
troll reference at the top of the
Yes.
show, and Gamora, the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. And
Yeah, actually, I feel like based on the way the font runs, the most dangerous woman in the
it's right.
galaxy.
And then there's somebody in the background, somebody in the
Yes,
shadows who's
yes,
also helping, and he finally reveals himself.
yes, that's
And
right.
that was another
Yeah, that
whoa
was a woe.
moment.
Yeah.
Whoa,
So
it turns out to be, why don't you reveal it?
no, it's Thanos,
Yes.
who's helping Gamora, who trained Gamora, and that's again something that ports over into the MCU, even
Right.
though it's done a little differently. Yeah. So
But our protagonist is getting help from somebody who tried to kill everybody in the universe.
and who still wants to,
He still
and
wants
that's
to,
still the
because
goal. It's
that's his
just
kink. That's what he does.
it's his thing. Yeah. He
Because
sees the
he's in love with
Magus.
death,
So yeah, it's
literally in
which
love
is
with the
something
incarnation of death.
which I'm going to say right now is I think they messed up in the MCU. I think the love
Yeah.
of death thing was better than the weird Malthusian whatever the
Echo
hell that was.
terrorist sort
Yeah,
of.
it didn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, a couple of things happen in these first couple of issues. Not only do we get established about the Magus and this church and the matriarch who is sort of helping run the church for the Magus or the Magus or whatever his name is. We do get Pip the Troll, who, by the way, Starlin said he based somewhat on Jack Kirby.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
What an homage.
Well, it's somebody with an impish sense of humor
That's
and
right.
yeah, cigar chomping all the
Cigar
time.
chomping all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know how much of a sybarite that who Jack Kirby was, but
yeah. I will
yeah.
say that smoking in space is a theme that goes back to Planet of the Apes.
Oh
Now
yeah.
we've got smoking in space with Pip the Troll, and there may be some smoking in space in the next episode.
Who
Anyway,
knows?
that's a little bit of a precursor.
Yeah.
So the one of the very yeah the trial, and then that's the case we're talking about. He unleashes this soul gem that he has on the judge
Hmm.
Krator, and he's the one that's like, oh, you really thought I was bad, and he
Yeah.
laments all that, and we get well, I'm going to hold off on the Elric comparisons, but this is where it kind of starts, right, with the soul
Hmm.
gem. What did you
Because he
think
had the
about?
soul gem in the 60s,
Yeah,
the
well, the
very
70s.
60s issues, but it had poorly defined abilities. He would occasionally blast people
Well,
with it or use it to lay some truth on them.
man, I will be
Man.
Dr. Difficult and point out, or maybe Dr. Pedant, it was the 70s. The Stolgem
Oh, that's
was
true.
the High Evolutionary gave it to him.
Well, the 60s really did end in 1969.
That's right. We're gonna do the half decade version of eras.
I think so.
Seems fair.
Culturally, at least a couple of more years into the next
Well,
decade.
again, that Counter Earth thing. Well, let's see. Well, in Counter Earth, clearly things were a little behind. Very 60s.
Right.
Anyway, never mind.
There you go.
It's
That's
gonna
the
have
explanation.
a digression here that was not worth it. What did you think of the clown episode, the clown issue?
Oh,
He gets
awesome.
captured by the church. He's been put on trial, and they're trying to turn him, and they put him in this sensory helmet where he's experiencing this reality, and that he's supposed to be being surrounded by people who support the church, and then therefore um, convincing him to join the church.
Right.
But Warlock's mind is so powerful, he just sees them all as clowns. I just thought that
Yeah.
was fantastic.
Oh, it was. And it's a very specific parody.
Yes.
So so in this story, like, he discovers that there are the clowns are in charge of things, and they just are pumping out trash and
Mm-hmm.
after
Mm-hmm.
trash piles until you get one that's gigantic and it collapses, and then they
Yes.
build it up all over again, and then Warlock finds these gems in there, and this was all a not very thinly uh, parody of Marvel Comics, right?
Mm.
So this was Starlin poking at his publisher, saying, "Yeah, you're just like often overlooking gems that you could be producing for all the typical bland, unimaginative superhero crap that you put out." And a lot of like the guys who are operating the sensory technology
Right.
are caricatures of people who
Right.
worked at Marvel Comics.
That's right.
It's a brilliant issue.
It really is. It's a great issue. So then when he finally escapes from this thing, and this is also when we're finding out that Gamora is communicating with
Mhm.
some other her master who ends up being Thanos. So then we have Magus reveals that they're gonna have a fight because he's lived all this before, right? This whole timey-wimey thing, right?
Mhm.
He mocks Warlock by repeating back dialogue that he said that was defiant but really wasn't defiant.
Oh, doing the annoying saying that at the same moment as
Yeah,
Warlock
yeah,
is saying
exactly,
it. Yeah.
exactly. And then we get this thing that the in-betweener is going to be summoned by various mechanisms. The in-betweener is again one of these cosmic creatures who stands between light and dark, chaos and order, good and evil, and he's going to end up banishing Warlock into a dimension where he'll go crazy and then go back in time and eventually emerges the Magus. And this is all sort
Yeah.
of a preordained fate that he has to deal with.
Mhm.
And then, of course, Thanos gets involved, and eventually. Anything about that did you want to talk about
No,
before
no.
I?
Other than maybe it's worth mentioning it. When I was in high school, I drew the in-betweener on a folder one time. because he's like
Did
half
he?
black, half white,
Did
you
they?
know.
Did they send you to the principal's office to ask what you were drawing?
No. They'd all seen the Star Trek episode
That's
and,
right.
figured that, it,
He does look very much
yeah,
like those guys.
yeah. I forgot the race.
They're from Charon. That's the
Sharon,
planet
that's right.
Charon.
Yeah.
So that's who they kind of look like. He looks like
Mm.
um,
Still in a bathrobe.
in a bathrobe, yeah, and
Right.
and that his bath it doesn't matter. He's in a
Anyway. Well, we have to paint a picture for the listeners.
yeah, 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 yeah. He in fact, when he shows up, Warlock says again to use the word because it does come from the comic, right? Talks about cosmic consequences, so it's
Mm.
very of upfront
Right.
in this stuff. So, I mean, eventually what happens is, right, Warlock sacrifices himself by somehow time traveling and using the soul gem to absorb himself to stop him from becoming the Magus. At which point, the Magus starts to do the whole Marty McFly's family thing and fades out of existence while fighting Thanos.
Mm.
And then Thanos takes off, and then Warlock goes does his thing for a while. So that's in very quick order. That's up through issue 11, and this is what I would just call the Magus or the Magus saga.
I looked it up. It's Magus.
Is it Magus? So
The weird, you're right. So,
I'm right.
but weirdly, it's Magi,
Yes, it is.
plural.
Yeah, it is.
Go
It is.
figure.
GIF. I don't know. I say it's
Yeah.
GIF. I know the guy said it was
Magician,
GIF.
but
Yeah.
not,
So,
it's not magician.
a mutual friend of ours with whom I have done some writing would frequently comment. We would comment back and forth about how stupid English is because it just doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
it doesn't.
Anyway, so there we go. Then, then we get what I think of as kind of filler episodes or issues, issue 12
Yeah.
through 15, which includes some background on Pip the Troll and a sort of a side adventure for him and this thing called the Star Thief that shows up.
Kind of an interesting villain, but
But yeah, not
it's more how like how that story ends that I think is the most interesting part of it.
yeah. So these are fine. I didn't
Yeah.
find them like they're still better than the Counter Earth stuff by
Oh yeah.
many levels. I I did I did like the lines as a sort of an origin story about Pip the Troll. He was some sort of royalty on the planet Laxadaisica, which I kind of liked.
Yeah.
But my my favorite line is that he was a product of a superior product of selective inbreeding. That I
There you
thought that
go.
was anyway. But yeah, this whole plot line, it's a story we saw it kind of in one of the issues of the Fantastic Four we talked about. It's a kind of a Twilight Zone kind of thing where a guy has powers that he doesn't fully understand, but it can affect the universe. In this case, somebody in a coma.
Mhm. Well, somebody who has no senses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
So he
I don't
just
even.
lives within his own brain.
That's right. So I mean, I don't even really. I'm going to be honest. The story doesn't make total sense to me, and it
No.
starts to get boring, and so I start kind of reading quickly. So maybe I shortchange it in some capacity. Um, but at the end, what happens at the end that you might want to talk about?
Well, that you know, his relative who's sitting there watching over him,
Yes,
shoots him in the head.
the male nurse. I love that.
Yeah,
It's very 70s. He hired a male nurse. Okay,
I know.
cool.
Well, anyway, so the Star Thief is mind
Yes,
controlled, and
yes,
because he's fighting Warlock, the Star Thief kind of loses control of
yes.
this guy, and then he just says, "Okay, I'm fully aware of what's going on here. Since
Yeah,
this creature is trying to just turn all the lights off in the
that's
universe by
just to
snuffing
literally.
out the stars,
Yes.
yeah, then I just have to shoot him in the head.
Yep. And it does feel kind of Twilight Zone indie at the end because he's like,
Yeah,
he knows he saved the universe, but everyone else thinks he's crazy. And anyway, but the other part that happens at the end is kind of significant. It's also one of the things I don't really care for,
oh, go for it.
which is that Warlock shows up and he's bigger than the solar system because
That was
of
stupid.
it. Thank you. Yes, it was stupid for a whole lot of reasons. The idea was he'd been in another part of the universe in the Herculean galaxy, if I recall properly.
Yeah, something
And
like
then
that.
because
Yeah.
of the theory of the expanding universe, he was expanding faster in that part of the universe than was happening in the Milky Way. When he comes back, he's literally like, I don't know what
Like,
magnitude of size bigger of the solar system. He's like a toddler standing over a model of, a little tiny
right.
model.
He's a
Which is,
giant wraith because his atoms are spread out.
yeah, it just made no sense. It seemed like an excuse narratively for him not to be able to go back to Earth, but I don't really know what the point was. And of course, it's almost immediately retconned back to him shrinking back in a
Yeah.
subsequent story. Because there's a couple of stories that happen. I don't think we can
Mm.
talk about it if you like, but I don't really have it in my notes.
No, no, no. I
Um,
don't need to.
and then, but then the conclusion really of all of this stuff, because Thanos is still kind of hanging in the background. He wants the Soul Gem so he can complete his collection, as one does. And so there's two stories. One is in the Avengers Annual #7. The other one's in the Marvel 2-in-1 #2, both in 1977, and they're a continuation, the same story. They're
Yep.
and without, I don't know to belabor the entire plot, but I mean, the bottom line is the Avengers, along with Captain Marvel and Warlock, all basically confront Thanos. At some point, Warlock is that scene where he shows up and absorbs himself back into the Soul Gem happens, and he goes to live in Gem World inside the Soul Gem. Although he does come back in the Spider-Man, the Marvel 2-in-1 annual to
Hmm.
defeat Thanos and puts Thanos into stasis and stone. He stays there. So Warlock goes away. 1977, Warlock goes away until 1991. Likewise, Thanos goes away until roughly the same period of time, which is kind of interesting. But because they come back when Starlin is writing a Silver Surfer comic in the 1990s,
Hmm.
and then leads to the whole Infinity War thing. I found this to be a pretty good resolution to this particular chapter. What did you think about it?
Yeah, it was, and so Warlock is living inside the Soul Gem,
Yes,
with all of his
along with
victims.
Gamora and Pip, and because
Yeah,
he's
all the
over.
other people he's killed with the Soul Gem.
Exactly.
And it's an Eden for him. It's peaceful.
Yes,
Everyone's very forgiving, obviously.
he's finally at rest.
Yeah,
They're
he's
all at
finally at
rest.
rest, but he gets summoned back in order to defeat Thanos,
Yes,
and Starlin positions him very squarely as Thanos' ultimate adversary.
yes,
Where Thanos
that's right.
represents death and Warlock represents life, and as
Right.
important as Captain Marvel is in this story, Warlock is even more important.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is one of the reasons why I was disappointed that they didn't use Warlock in the MCU,
Yeah, same
except in
here.
that one appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So, before I get into some specific questions, is there anything else about the saga you want to talk about?
No, I think we're good.
So, I've already kind of hinted at it, but I'll go ahead and bring it up since we talked about Elric of Melniboné a couple of episodes ago.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to read this now and not see some parallels. And we talked about it in passing.
Some,
Okay,
some.
quite a few. So, have at
Shall
my
I
own.
list them for you?
Yeah. Shall I
So, okay.
shall I compare thee to Albino Day? Go ahead.
An albino ex-emperor, a sickly albino ex-emperor.
Exactly.
So he has a gem in his head,
Hmm.
which is something straight out of not Elric, but another Moorcock character, Dorian Hawkmoon.
Hmm.
The the vampire gem sucks the souls out of people, which is basically Stormbringer.
Yes.
We see personifications of law and chaos. And I think the bad guy in Warlock and Captain Marvel, Thanos, is trying to
Hmm.
achieve universal annihilation the same way that the Lords of Chaos in the Elric books are trying to annihilate the reality that existed there in the
Hmm.
world of the Young Kingdoms. And finally, even there is a name drop to one of the Lords of Chaos, who doesn't play a big role in Elric, though she's mentioned, but is a bigger deal in the Corum series, and that's Zyambarg. And if I remember correctly, Starlin just like dropped the last letter and called that Ziambar. There's some character he
Mm.
encounters named Ziambar. So it's all very clearly Moorcock inspired, or he's tipping his hat to Moorcock or something.
No, I think quite clearly. I think also, as I mentioned before, there is this notion that Warlock has a fate, and I
Yeah.
think that also is similar
Oh, good point. Yes. The
to Elric.
doom. Yeah.
Yes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I noticed there's a whole bunch of I mean, ordering, not law and chaos, but ordering
Yeah.
chaos stuff in this
Hmm.
stories, especially when you get to the Marvel 2-1 annual number two. I mean, you get the in-betweener in the Warlock series, but then you get this idea of Lord Chaos and Lord Order, and they're talking about the whole story and how they're involved in the whole thing.
Hmm.
It's pretty central, I think. I mean, I tried to find. In fact, I was kind of surprised, and maybe I didn't use my research skills to their maximum. It just seems the kind of thing someone would have asked Starlin, and all I found was one snippet on one post referring to an interview in which Starlin at least admitted he'd read it, but he thought he read it after he wrote this stuff. So you would think they would be more cognizant.
Yeah, not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's in fairness, the gem on the forehead predates Starlin, but the making into a soul sucking entity that had its own mind that Warlock couldn't
Right.
control was pretty damn close to
Oh, or
Stormbringer.
also, by the way, just as when uh, Elric tries to put down Stormbringer and
He
realizes
cannot.
he
He
can't do
cannot.
it.
That's
Same
right.
thing with the Soul Gem and
You
Warlock.
see, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and the way in which he has to, it doesn't. I don't remember why he had to absorb Gamora. I'm forgetting that plot point. The plot point with Pip the Troll was that Thanos had already wiped out Pip's brain and left him
Hmm.
as a way to taunt Warlock, and Warlock
Right.
absorbed him as sort of as an act of mercy. So I don't remember the Soul Gem lashing out at allies the way Stormbringer does in the stories, but still this notion of having to absorb allies and all these kinds of things. The parallels are quite stark, I think. They're just
Yeah.
kind of impossible to ignore. So I'll go back and reiterate, unless anything else about Elric you want to talk about?
No, I kind of want to talk about Starlin a little bit
Let's do
more.
that then. I think,
So I just want to kind of highlight just how many great stories Starlin was responsible for, whether he drew them or not.
yes,
Yeah, we mentioned a couple, but I put together a quick list here.
good.
So we've talked about in like the Batman, some of the Batman episodes, some of these stories. So he wrote the Cult limited series. There was a run in I don't know if it's Batman or Detective, but 10 Nights of the Beast, where there's like a sort of a
Yes, it was
KGB
sort of
agent who's sort of like the Soviet Batman.
yeah, it's like a mini series embedded in one of the runs of the comics, if I recall properly, but I don't remember which one either.
Yeah, and then a Death in the Family
Yes,
in which Robin dies.
yes,
The Robin at that time. So he also did kind of lesser known but still great. The Death of Captain Marvel. There
yes.
was a graphic novel. I think it might have been Marvel's first
It was
graphic
Marvel's
novel.
first graphic novel, and it is, I think, a testament. Because I could be wrong about this. Except maybe in weird, maybe temporary flashback form. I don't think Marvel's ever come back the way.
No, so somebody who actually dies. I
Yeah,
mean, like a zombie version of him may have shown up at some point, but that character definitely stays
yeah.
dead
He
for a
dies of cancer of all
long
things.
time. Right. Yeah. Yeah, he's fighting some supervillain who can explode himself
Yeah.
and gets exposed to some cancerous material,
Yes.
carcinogenic material, and then develops cancer and dies. And that was great. I love that book. Also, I'll mention uh, there's a Bernie Wrightson drawn
Hmm.
graphic novel, The Hulk and the Thing: The Big Change, which
Yeah.
was just a romp, just tons of fun.
And he did something with DC too, didn't he? With Bernie Wrightson, was that the Weird?
Well, yes, he did. He did the weird and also writes and drew the Cult, the Batman
Okay, that's right.
limited
That's
series.
right.
And then last of all, since you mentioned DC, another favorite of mine, Cosmic Odyssey, which
Hmm.
Mike Mignola drew.
No, he was. I mean, and he's still, like I said. And then I love Dreadstar. I don't know. Did you read Dreadstar?
Oh yeah, Dreadstar was Roller coaster ride. It was fun.
Dreadstar started as a black and white in the Epic magazine in the
Mm.
70s, and then became a standalone comic under the Epic imprint, which was a Marvel owner, a creator-owned imprint, if I recall properly. And that eventually went to First Comics, and now it's existed. There are apparently some Dreadstar stuff I have not read that's happened over the years, like I mentioned a moment ago. Anyway, but so yeah, Starlin's always been like way at the top of my list about creators that I really, really respect and whose work almost never disappoints. And I would point out again, and I've already said it, but it's worth sort of doing the list, right? I mean, you think about all the things that are in the MCU that he's responsible for, the general story of the Soul Gems, Thanos, Gamora,
Hmm.
Drax. These are all key characters that are really important to this saga, and it's one of those things where I always wonder, and how much money Marvel's made, and how much money Jim Starlin probably didn't make as a result of
Right.
all of that stuff. It's kind of sad, really.
Well, also too, I
Oh, he also
think,
created Shang. He co-created Shang-Chi, which became a Marvel movie
yeah,
as well.
Master of Kung Fu, yeah.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I discovered Master of Kung Fu when Paul Gulacy was drawing it. He had that sort
Hmm.
of Steranko-like style. And
Right.
then I went back and read the
I
Engelbert
actually never have read those comics.
Starlin. Yeah. Everyone was kung fu fighting, so I
That's
don't
what I
know.
understand. That's what I understand.
Yeah.
It was very
Uh,
exciting.
so I also just want to say that this is the product of, again, an experimental time at Marvel,
Yes.
right? So they were willing to back oddball projects. Okay, there's a swamp monster, and if he grabs you, you burn at his touch, which sounds like the goofiest idea ever, but actually was a very fun comic strip, you
But only
know.
if you know fear, right?
Exactly. And then, you're backing people who were, oddball writers, like Steve Gerber, Man-Thing and
Uh-huh.
Howard the Duck and Jim Starlin and other people. Anyway, it was willingness to stretch what Marvel Comics did, what superhero comics were about, that led to this terrific run
Yes.
of comics, and then all the downstream creations that came out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we often on this podcast have said that sometimes the auteur theory is overblown, especially for movies, but it is certainly the case, right? That individual creator sets of creators can really leave a mark, whether it's
Hmm.
this various comic examples we've already mentioned in this episode, or it's the Gilroys and Andor, getting the right person with the right property and giving them the
Right.
opportunity to do what they're good at instead of trying to constrain them too much. And of course, we also talk about some constraints good, but too much
Right.
constraints also a problem. It's all a balance. It's a balance between, we need the in-betweener. Too much
Right.
constraint, not enough constraint, just right. Maybe
Wait, I've got
the
my black and white
in-betweeners.
bathrobe right here.
That's right. I just realized the in-betweener is like Goldilocks.
Oh,
At any
just
rate,
right.
just
Just
right. It's
right.
just right
Maintaining the
between,
balance.
exactly. Or it's, it also might be Aristotelian virtue, but that's a whole
Yeah.
other concept in
But
podcasting.
but but again, like pushing corporations out of their comfort zone a
Yes.
little bit is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Mm.
So, and we may have already covered this, but was there anything about this in particular that you really liked that you want to highlight, or have we hit all your highlights?
I think we have, just with maybe just one exception. I'll say that again, the art style of
Hmm.
Starlin is very distinctive, and in a lot of the Warlock issues, some of the Dreadstar issues, and so forth, he got to really pay careful attention to his own art, just not crank it out.
Yes.
And these are, kind of wallpaper on your computer, or
Right.
or if you're into this sort of thing, putting a poster on your wall, worthy art. It's really good.
Agreed. Agreed. Um, how about anything, any critiques that we haven't leveled?
Oh, well, I think we've done a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes he comes up with things that are a little goofy. Like the Pip episode. I did it now. The Pip
It's
issue
it's
of
impossible.
Warlock was Yeah, there were a couple of dumb things in there, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's picking nits really,
That's right. That's
or
right.
the giant warlock
Yeah, the
looking at the
expanding
sun.
universe thing I did not care for. I really
Yeah,
didn't, but that's whatever. It's comic
yeah.
books, man. Get a life. Okay, now moving right along. How about merch? Did you have any merch?
The only thing I could remember I had was a button. Since we had a button maker in the
Right,
store
right.
and we would just kind of take things and turn them into buttons, I definitely, one of the first things I made was a warlock button.
Yeah, I didn't. The only thing I had was again, it was one of those deals where just finding more comics was the quest. But
Yeah,
although in some ways questing for something that did not exist, which is more really good Warlock stories at the time because there weren't any
yeah,
in 80,
yeah.
in the early 80s.
Hey, when something comes along and it's good, it's precious, right? It's not going to go on
That's
forever.
right. No, I will say, and I did like
Mhm.
the Warlock stuff that he did in the 90s was I think was also late, yeah, I guess 90s. It was good. I thought it was good. And I've only slightly sampled more recent Warlock, and I had meant to read some of the most recent Warlock, and I just simply didn't. I know that he's hung out with the Guardians of the Galaxy and done some other stuff, but I'm not sure that any of it recaptures
Mm.
the Starlin of it all. How about something you would have wanted?
Well, I think it's the soul gem would have been too dorky, to stick a soul gem on your forehead.
That would be.
So I would probably just say, like, if there had been a red T-shirt with Warlock's yellow lightning bolt on it, that would have been great.
I almost put that down.
Yeah, it would be very glam too. And I realized maybe in my search for a soundtrack for this episode, I should have looked at David Bowie
Oh,
for a
that could
song.
work. That could
Yeah,
work. I decided there's some of Starlin's art I would really like as a print. There's certain
yeah,
covers or certain splash pages that I really think would make really I would hang that someplace. That's as
yeah.
close as it gets, though. Alrighty then. I think that brings us to the conclusion of this conversation of Jim Starlin's Warlock. Thank you all for joining us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
See you soon.
Bye bye.
Whoops, I dropped my soul gem in the sink. I better go retrieve that and say our farewells for now. Thank you for listening. You can find us on the podcast app or platform of your choice, where please like and subscribe. And also leave us a review if you feel so inclined. You can contact us directly at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. Look for us on Reddit, Facebook, Blue Sky, and other social media outlets. And check out someancientgeek.substack.com for our regular Substack blog. All content copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, and you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.